Can you hear me? This is Dorothy. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank
Dina and Carol, there is a noticeable difference with you girls using those iPads.
As far as the picture quality?
The picture quality, everything, sound, everything.
So I look, what, 46?
You look younger than me.
I was going to say
we are live.
I think they make us look fat, Nina.
Oh, that's
No.
for sure. Well, I got a fat shirt on.
I think they make us look fatter.
it's the camera angle. Somebody told
Yeah,
me.
and you can't really.
You can't do anything. You can't adjust it.
I tried to adjust it back, and it was worse because I wasn't even in the screen. But maybe that's not worse. Maybe
You have
that's.
to elevate it or something.
Mr. Greer, are we ready?
Yes, Mr. President, we are live.
Okay. Okay, this is the Barberton City Council. Today is March 15th, and we are going into our committee meetings. First up is Streets, Sidewalks, and Lighting with Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring to order Streets, Sidewalk, and Lighting. Today is March 15th, 2021. It is 6:02 p.m., and we are virtual. All members of the committee are present, and council members and guests noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion, request for legislation, there is none. For miscellaneous discussion, I have just a couple things. I reached out to Mr. Tracy today and inquired about the road list for 2021. The list is not finalized or put together yet. We're waiting on the 2021 budget to pass so that we can put the bids together and get the best possible outcome on the road. So the residential list is not out yet, but as soon as we get the budget passed and they see what they're working with, they'll have that list out shortly after. The list for the AMATS projects are still a go as far as I haven't heard any change. So that's 5th Street, 2nd Street. Mr. Tracy, do you have a list of the actual AMATS projects we're hoping to get done this year that are scheduled?
Yeah, I can put together something that's in writing, but it's 2nd Street, Southwest, Norton Avenue, Worcester Road North, 2 different sections of that, and still 619 as well.
Okay. So those are our grant funding, the AMATS projects, and the ones that I inquired about were the 2021 residential roads. The second thing is during that same conversation or to talk about the streets, I also talked with Mr. Tracy about some concerns I had with some of the road conditions and the potholes, and to see about looking at alternative methods and using new technologies to repair some of these potholes in some of the roads. My concern was, and as we're all fielding a lot of questions, and it's probably mainly revolving around roads. Is we're putting a lot of money into our roads. However, some of these potholes and side roads are just getting really, really bad, and to the point where I've only been on council a little over a year now, and I'm starting to see reoccurring potholes. So the same locations start to pop up. So my call to him was more about how we can find alternatives and better ways to do what we're doing now to so we're not doubling back and trying to fix other potholes. So we are looking at other alternative methods, and then for that. So when Mr. Tracy has some more information, I'm sure we'll have some more. Nina?
Okay. The I don't know what the other alternatives you're looking at, cold patch or hot patch. At this point in time when my constituents call me, it's only cold patch that you can put down until the weather gets, 40, 50 degrees, and the hot patch plants open up, which usually goes to ODOT first, and then trickles down to the municipalities. So I just assure my constituents that when you use cold patch, it's not permanent. And the hole's going to come back. The snowplow goes down the street. It's going to scrape that. And to just, send me an email, let me know that what was patched, say, a week ago or so, and then we got snow and ice, it needs to be patched again. I would like to look at some other material that wintertime cold patch material that would be that would last a little bit longer, but that's all in the chemicals of making the cold patch and the hot patch and that type thing. So I would welcome a new brand or a new something that they can do on those streets. Thanks.
Mrs. Fry?
Thank you, Mr. Greer. Nina, I just wanted to point out you're absolutely correct that cold patch is usually used at this particular point in the year. However, I had some really bad potholes and reported them last week, and they did fix it with hot mix. So
they might have had some, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, every once in a while, and actually our weather's been going back and forth. And when we have, I think it has to be over 50 degrees,
50.
Maybe Greg could tell us that. And then they do, when they can, they do it with hot patch, because if they don't, they're just going to be going back all the time. But I just wanted to interject that and tell you that, yes, you are correct about the cold patch, but they have been using it in the last few weeks when the weather permits.
If they can get it. Yeah, they can get it. Yeah. That's the whole thing. Mm-hmm.
So
thank you.
Just when I was talking with Mr. Tracy, I brought up like the rejuvenating, basically it's a recycling bin. We've talked earlier in the year about a possible like big recycling machine that grinds, mixes, and lays down all at the same time. That's just kind of was high hopes. But we were looking, I called him when we were talking about these pull behind hot mixes that they could do right there on the spot. And they can actually make their own hot mix using recycled material from contractors. We have our own pile of asphalt grindings at the service department currently. And better ways and just the little things that we could do is better prepping our potholes before we patch and just trying to save a little money. I think it's important balancing the cost and how we currently do it and understanding how we currently do it. And I'm still learning. But currently when we need hot patch, and say it's long, we have a stretch that we can do hot patch. We have to send two workers in a big truck to either two locations, but about 45-minute round trip each time they go get hot mix. And that's time, that's money, that's gas, that's workers away from things that we can do. So I was trying to just come up with ways that we could possibly do a lot of it here and smaller, especially when we were so we don't have to keep on sending our workers out constantly to 45-minute trips just to get hot mix. So we were looking at that. He assured me that we're also looking at, because technology changes constantly. So they've already looked at the recycling abilities, and they are re-looking at the recycling abilities again to see if we can't maybe cut some costs, get a better product, and give our crew the right tools that they need to get the job done more effectively and more efficiently. Mr. Heidick, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I had two things. One was there was a nasty echo there for a second. It's gone now. Two, Director Tracy, is there and I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, and I know weather's the biggest factor, is there a time frame where the old entrances and exits with the 76 overpass at Worcester Road, East Avenue will be somewhat completed?
I know that they're ahead of schedule, Councilman Heidick. I don't know the date as far as when they're supposed to have that completed. I know they've talked about having that portion of the project done possibly by the end of the year, because they talked about paving Worcester Road North at the conclusion of that project, and they talked about paving Worcester Road North at the end of the year. So that leads me to believe that there's a possibility that could happen, but I wouldn't hold my breath and expect it to be earlier, probably early next year sometime.
That leads into, is that going to affect the timetable for the 619 project with that being at the end of it?
No, they're kind of treating it as two separate projects. So everything that's south of the viaduct will get done this spring, and then they'll wait on the other part, the Worcester Road North part, not the Fifth Street part. They'll do the Fifth Street part first this spring, and they'll do the Worcester Road North part at the conclusion of the highway project.
Thank you.
Mr. Jaber, did you have your hand up?
Yes, sir, I did. Thank you. Thank you, President. Chairman. For the tar and chip, has anybody looked into that? I know we brought that up last year. I noticed, I got a lot of family and friends who live in the Springfield Township area, and a lot of their side roads are done with the tar and chip. And I think it would help out a lot in some areas
Yes.
of.
So our part of our conversation today, it wasn't really part of it, and it really didn't go into detail. But Mr. Tracy did mention the possibility of certain areas in town that could utilize that possibly. He did briefly explain that the cost of it is higher if we do specifically. So he was trying to work countywide to see if we can't get into some type of program that way to cut costs, so it's not as expensive if we were just to have somebody come out and do it locally. Mr. Tracy, could you elaborate on that and Mr. Jaber's question?
Yeah, so we're exploring the options, as Councilman Greer had mentioned earlier, different alternatives for besides mill and fill, which is, it's a very effective standard way of resurfacing. So for as far as chip and seal goes, we have to identify the areas that it would work in. We'd also have to identify the types of road surfaces that it would work on as well. It won't have the longevity that a mill and fill may have. It doesn't provide any structural integrity to the road surface, but it does provide a moisture barrier to kind of keep that moisture off from getting under the surface and creating that freezing and thawing and popping that creates the potholes. But there's a lot of variables that go into that with the drainage and just the subsurface conditions underneath, and you have to have a semi-smooth surface to do it, or else it just reflects everything that's underneath of it. So, and what Mr. Gray was alluding to earlier is that for us to do just a small number of roads wouldn't be cost effective. So that may be something that if we look to go that route in the future, that we would partner with the county, because they do a large number of townships and villages and things throughout the city or throughout the county. So we definitely get better pricing doing it that way, approaching it that way.
Awesome. Thank you. Like I said, of all my emails and concerns from my constituents and business owners, I say 70% of the complaints or concerns are always about the roads. So I think we got to find some way to get these roads done and get these residents and business owners happy with these roads. I know it's nothing in our hands as much as we can wait for grants, but we need something to get done for these roads. They're getting worse and worse every year. Thank you.
Yep, I agree. And that was I've noticed a lot more reports and feedback of the same area, the same things opening back up. So that's why I reached out to Mr. Tracy today and just see if there was anything we can do to try to improve that. If we're going to be patching a lot more than we are going to be doing residential roads, then we probably should put a lot of our effort into trying to do the repair and patching a lot better. Mr. Tracy.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that definitely we need to keep working on and improving our road infrastructure. But since 2011, when Issue 8 passed, but between the grant funded programs and the regular residential road program, the city has made a significant impact in the infrastructure. We're right around 30% of all the roads have been repaved throughout all of those programs together. So we still have 70% to go. I don't know if that's attainable, what we can attain in the next 10 years, but it's been very impactful. Of course, it'd be great to have some additional funding for it, but I think for what we have to work with, we've been very effective. That 30% number, leveraging those dollars has made a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
still a lot of work.
We definitely have been had large amounts of grant money and a lot of work went in. All right. So, is there any other miscellaneous discussions for streets from the crowd committee? Mr. Heidick, I do have. I reached out to the District 4 ODOT project manager for the 76 widening project at the beginning of the year to ask him if there was any update on the project itself and when we could expect it. And I specifically asked him about the on-ramp and access roads for that project. And he said that those, at the time, and this is just to add to the conversation, at the time that I emailed that, he said that those were going to be the absolutely last thing that they did in that project, and that the project was still on schedule for 2022. So, but that was at the beginning of the year. I'll reach out and see, because if they are saying they're going to wait until that's done, that the project in construction date on the website I'm looking at it is still set to summer 2022. So hopefully things have changed.
Thank you, Chair.
Who did you talk to, Councilman Greer?
I can look at my email and I'll send that to you. I might be able to get it for you real quick, just looking it up, keyword. But
Yeah, that's the scheduled date for the project. So they'll likely give you the.
Yeah. But he did say that it was going to be the very last thing that they put together. I'll track down that email and I'll send it to you after council as soon as I can.
Thanks.
Yep. Is there any other miscellaneous discussions for street, sidewalk, and lighting? All right, I don't see any. Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion.
And I'll
made
second it.
Motion made by Mrs. Angeloff and seconded by Mrs. Fry. Street, sidewalk, and lighting is adjourned at 6:17 p.m.
Thank you very much. I just want to remind everybody to, if you're not speaking, to mute. There's been a little bit of feedback. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services with Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services meeting March 15th at 6:18, virtual. All members are present, noted, and all other council members and visitors also noted. We have no new requests for legislation, and I'm opening this up for miscellaneous discussion to the committee. Anybody then? I see maybe 4 or 5 of you guys. Anybody else have any questions?
Chairman, I
Opening this up. There you go, Mr. Heidick. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Want to thank the city and everybody that coordinated with the mass vaccination at Prince of Peace Church. I have quite a few customers that were able to take advantage of that, and that was a really good thing. I see from being in, an industry where it's customers are in and out, with the vaccinations and the schedules of it and the opening up to different demographics there, consumer confidence is starting to return. I'm starting to see people that were not very comfortable with going out for the past 6 months that are now coming out possibly once a week. They're still avoiding, the busier times, but I see them mid-afternoon. And, even if sanctions are lifted by the governor against all industries, consumer confidence is going to be the big key to getting any small business back. And I do see that starting to return. So the Prince of Peace mass vaccination, in my eyes, was a success, and want to thank everybody involved in that.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. And I will also piggyback and say thank you for that. And thank you for the mayor for setting that up and getting it organized for everybody out there. Thank you, Mayor. And also during discussion, on March 24th, 2021 is the council chambers. We're having the Barberton Health Committee. If you guys are available, Summit County Health Committee, anybody wants to come join us, it'll be the council chambers at 4:30 next week. If it cancels, I will let you guys know. Any other discussion? Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Chair.
What day is that, Mr. Jaber?
Wednesday, sir.
Wednesday?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So there is something was pushed out via email through the safety director today, or maybe it was yesterday, but about the vaccine finder, that people could go to vaccinefinder.org, and it showed locations of vaccine locations. So just wanted to point that out too as well. Again, that website's vaccinefinder.org, and it was sent to our city email from Mrs. Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Greer. You said it's vaccinefinder.org, correct?
Correct.
All right. You're awesome. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Seeing nobody else, motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
I will second that.
Mr. Griffin, and second by Mr. Heidick. And we are adjourned at 6:21. And with that, Mr. President, I pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have a special utilities meeting with Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities is calling a special meeting on Monday, the 15th of March. It is 6:21. All members are present virtually and those noted. We have a letter from Mr. Tracy calling for emergency legislation authorizing the mayor to execute a memorandum of understanding, MOU, with Summit County Department of Public Health to provide compliance services for the city's National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, that's NPDES permit. Mr. Tracy, did you want to expound on that for us?
Sure. So required by the EPA to have all of our discharge points identified. Most of them are identified, some are unidentified. They have to be sampled and screened over a 5-year period. We have approximately 219 outfalls, and over the 5-year period, the county will screen the outfalls, they'll sample the outfalls, send them to a lab to make sure everything comes out clean. If they do get, this is dry weather screening, so they have to have a 72-hour period of dry weather. Typically, after 72 hours of dry weather, you're not going to have any flow in the storm sewers. If you do, it's probably groundwater or it's a source that shouldn't be there. So they'll go sample those after a dry period. They'll send them out for analysis and look for E. coli. They'll go through all 219 over the 5-year period, and the processes that they use and everything that they conduct is they do the inspection, the sampling, they enter all the inspection into a database. They'll notify us if there's an issue, and then we go out and do an investigation of the area, and they also put together a report at the end of each year.
Is this the same? We've done this in the past, haven't we?
Yeah, we're under an umbrella permit with the Summit County engineer.
Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Tracy? Hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this?
Joyce, I
Yes.
will make a motion to call for this.
Carol.
I will second it.
Okay, Mrs. DeBevick, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the motion carries. That was our special meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I will
Carol
make a
Fry?
motion. I will make
Okay.
a motion.
I will second it.
Thank you, Carla. We are adjourned at 6:24.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much. Next up is planning, annexation, and codes with Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is Planning, Annexation, and Codes. It's Monday, March 15th at 6:25 p.m. We're meeting virtual with GoToMeeting. All members are present, along with council present, along with guests as noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion, legislation request, we have none. Can open it up to miscellaneous. Anybody from the committee has anything for miscellaneous?
I do not.
Nope.
Okay, I do have one. I'm sorry. Did somebody say something? No.
I just said I don't have any.
Okay. I just want to make a correction that was on the council meetings list. Tomorrow, Tuesday, March 16th at 5:30, the Board of Zoning Appeals will meet at the Active Adult Center. Wednesday, March 17th at 5:30, Planning Commission will be meeting at Council Chambers. It was mixed, it was turned around. So Board of Zoning's Active Adult Center and Planning Commission will be Council Chambers. 5:30 at both of those. So please make note of that. And any miscellaneous from anybody from the body?
Chair. It's Mrs.
I'm sorry.
Debevic. It's Mrs.
Okay.
Debevic. I just have a
Go ahead,
question
Mrs.
for Mr. Hunt. Has the Ryan Holmes submitted anything formal as far as drawings for the allotment there on Austin Drive?
We did receive a preliminary plat for Austin Drive, and I can share that with council members. I'll be at Planning Commission Wednesday.
Okay, I was just asking because I had received a couple of phone calls from residents regarding what the status of the road, of the dead end road.
They have done away with that. There's no more steps between them.
I'm sorry?
There's no more stub roads being shown. One continuous loop road now.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Chair, Mrs. Angeloff? I did have someone ask a question about the Ryan homes. If they are not sold, Mr. Hunt, they were concerned that they would go to low-income housing and metropolitan housing would take them over like they did another building. Is there any possibility of that?
I would say little to none. There's been zero conversation regarding that, and these will be individually sold. So judging by the price point, I don't think AMETS or another organization similar to AMETS, I'm sorry, not AMETS, AMHA would ever be inclined to buy such housing. So I would think there's zero truth to that, Councilwoman.
This was a concern of someone in the area that they thought that if they didn't sell out, that they would end up being a low-income housing just by virtue of them not selling all the houses before they were finished. So it was just a concern of someone in the area. Thank you.
Ms. Colburn, that doesn't happen overnight anyhow. That process, that's not Ryan Homes or Wayne Homes or up in New Haven, what they're doing. That's not the intentions of that. Now, things could change, but that does not change overnight. There's a process for AMHA, and it's a long process for that. I've had concerns and I've had calls on that too. But this is the first that we've met with Lemon Developments on Wednesday. So a lot of this is just, stipulation until we can sit down with them and go through what that development's going to look like and what they're going to do. But I can tell you, and Mr. Hunt can back me up, they're very accountable. They everything that we have a question with, they are working with us with that. Mr. Greer, you had your hand up.
Yes, Chair. Wait, am I on mute? I just wanted to add, I on that topic, when I went up to Painesville and talked to the sales rep, and that was actually one of the things that I asked, not specific to metropolitan housing, but they said that the houses in the section of townhomes don't even go up until they're all sold anyway.
Yeah.
So there was no building of the houses and no one buying them. Like
most of those townhouses are sold before they're even completed with that. And that's just not Ryan Homes, that's Wayne Homes too. So let's keep our fingers crossed. I think this is a plus for the Barberton on a housing development like this. And I will keep reporting to you once I go to the Planning Commission meetings and ask the questions. So I will report back. Mr. Heidig, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So essentially, are these type of flats and complexes basically on a pre-order basis?
No, they're not. But when people find out that they're building them, they'll stop by and talk to the developer and they're interested in it. So from a contractor I talked to, a lot of them are sold before they're even done because that age group, they're interested in that. They like having their own small little community, and they like having a neighbor next door and that type thing. I'm hoping personally that these will be completely sold out or very close to it by the time the project's done.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? I can't see any more hands, so just yell out if somebody wanted to talk. Nope. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Mrs. Coburn, and second, Mr. Greer. And we are adjourned at 6:32. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mrs. Angeloff. Next up is Finance and Personnel with Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I will mention again, since we're on these iPads, I cannot see everyone. So if you have a question during the meeting, please just wait for a pause and then say that you would like to comment on something. But tonight is Monday, March 15th, and it is 6:33 p.m. We are meeting virtually. And I am going to bring to order the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting. All members of the committee are present, as well as all council members and guests as noted on my sheet. Tonight we had a draft legislation, which was ordinance number 24/2021, titled Enter into Contract Lampion Companies. And this was for the LED lights at the foundation field, the lighting upgrade. However, I got an email this afternoon from the mayor asking that I withdraw this particular ordinance. So we will not be discussing it or voting on it or voting to get it out of committee. The second piece of legislation that I have for this evening is ordinance number 25/2021. This is to authorize payment to Huntington Bank. It is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to pay an invoice to Huntington Bank for the Clerk of Court's yearly bank fees in the amount of $6,433.85 and declaring an emergency. We did not have this piece of legislation last week, therefore we will have to vote to get it out of committee. It is was submitted by Mrs. Stevenson, the Clerk of Courts, and it is to pay for, as the ordinance says, their yearly bank fees. Does anyone have any questions about this particular piece of legislation? I don't see anybody have their hand up. Does anyone?
Afraid Bevick does.
Mrs.
Okay.
Fry.
Yes. Go ahead,
Thank you.
Carla.
Is this the same amount every year as far as the fees go? Do you have any idea? I didn't really receive a letter about the request.
I just received the ordinance, and I think that since it is bank fees, I would think that they would be different each year based on, what the fees are for.
So is this for this year coming up, the 2021 that we're in, or is it for last year?
Well, it must be for last year because it's for a purchase order that was dated after the obligation date, and the amount exceeds $3,000. So I would think that it would be for last year.
Okay,
But
that's
I might be wrong. There are no dates there. Can you chime in on this, Mr. Flaker?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Speaking with Mrs. Stevenson regarding this legislation, it is for 2020 bank fees. Usually their bank fees would normally come in to where it wouldn't have to go to council because the legislation says the PO is preceded by the invoice. So since the invoice we received the invoice and now they just got the PO in, usually it's not over $3,000 for the bank fees. This year it is, which Mrs. Stevenson was going to check with Huntington and see why her fees increased so much, because she noticed here the past few years her fees have been going up gradually each year. This year was a larger jump than last year, so she is going to speak with Huntington regarding that. So to answer your question, yes, it was for 2020 bank fees. And no, it's not the same amount every year. The past few years, it's been going up each year. So,
is Mr. Flaker? This is Mrs. DeBevick. Is this something that's usually budgeted for already in their budget?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have any more questions about this particular piece of legislation? I don't see any hands, so do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation? Mrs.
I'll make a motion.
Angela?
I'll make a motion to call.
Motion made by Mrs. Angela. I beg your pardon?
I will second it.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. DeBevick. Motion made by Mrs. Angela, seconded by Mrs. DeBevick. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, it's unanimous. We also have legislation for the March 29th legislative meeting. This is the series of 5 notes now that we are going to bid for. The first is Ordinance 12-2021 Operating and Capital Budget. The second, hang on a minute, I can give you the amounts. And that is in the amount of $540,000. The second is number 17-2021. This is a note ordinance for the 9th Street improvement. I'm sorry, that's the one that was $540,000. These are out of order. The operating and capital budget, the first ordinance that I read was 12-2021. That is, let me see here. That would be the bonds in the amount of $200,000. Is that right, Jeremy?
What was that?
The number 12-2021. Is that for, the amounts aren't in here, so.
No, Carol, that's the budget.
That's the actual budget.
Oh my God, yes. Okay.
You need to move on to 18.
I'm sorry. Yes, okay. Then the first note ordinance, I'm thinking they're all note ordinances. The first note ordinance is for the 9th Street Northeast Improvement Program, which was $540,000. The second ordinance, number 19-2021, number 18, 2021, is a note ordinance for the meter reading system replacement project. And that is in the amount of $325,000. The third note is for the 5th Street Northeast Lincoln Avenue Storm Water Project. That note, that note ordinance is in the amount of $200,000. Then we have a note ordinance for the street and road improvement repaving program notes, and that note will be in the amount of $200,000. And then we have ordinance number 21, 2021, which is a note ordinance for the trickling filter system at the wastewater treatment plant. And that note will be in the amount of $125,000. And I'm sorry about the mess up to begin with the operating budget. Of course, we're gonna vote on that on the 29th. Ordinance number 22-2021 was a note ordinance for the lighting improvements to recreational facilities, and this particular ordinance has been withdrawn due to the fact that we could not use that particular fund to pay on the notes. Thank you, Mrs. DeBevick, for bringing that up, and thank everyone who researched that to find out that we were making a mistake. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the ordinances which we are going to vote on the 29th? No, I don't see any hands. Is there any miscellaneous discussion for this evening? Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. If you look at past videos with yourself and Councilor Angeloff using those iPads there, it is a world of difference. I can see and I can hear you as clear as day. There's no feed interruption. There's no pausing. I'm glad we have them. Thank you much.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. Does anyone else have any comments?
Mrs. Fry, I have a couple things.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Flaker.
First off, just a reminder, this Saturday from 9 to 1, the drive-through here at the finance office will be open for any City of Barberton resident that wants to come through to have Rita prepare their city taxes. They just need to have copies of their tax documents. We'll pass out a form for them to fill out. They'll put it all in an envelope, pass it back in, and I'll get it forwarded up to Rita for them. Second thing, I am trying to follow along and try to dig up as much information as possible on the American Response Plan that was just passed by the federal government. We will be getting a distribution of funds from that, trying to find out now what we can use this for, what's allowable, what's not. I do have a webinar this week to start shedding some light onto it, and hopefully they'll produce more guidance as we go to try to figure out the permissible use of these funds. But I will keep you posted on what I find out.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks for bringing up about the drive-through event on Saturday. Mr. Heidick?
Thank you. And going off the drive-through clinic, Mr. Mayor, can we push that out on social media daily leading up to it just to get the word out?
The one with access point?
The Rita tax drop-off.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, yeah, we can push that out. No problem.
Thank you. If we could just daily, that way we could, people could share it and get the word out as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you for that suggestion, Mr. Heidick. Are there any other questions or comments for finance?
One more thing, Mr. Fry, just to piggyback on what Mr. Heidick said.
Okay, thank you.
And just a reminder, Monday through Friday, individuals can come through normal drive-through hours, 8 to 4:30, to also that need their city taxes prepared by Rita. They can drop off Monday through Friday as well. Figured we would offer at least one Saturday for the workers that work during the day, that is Monday through Friday, give them a chance as well, because I know a lot of people made use of that. So I will definitely make sure next year that once this pandemic's behind us and everything, that when we try to get Rita back, we will get Rita back out here for taxpayer assistance to make it easier on everyone.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other? Oh, Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Chair. What was the time again Saturday for the Rita?
9 to 1.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, one more time. Any other questions or comments for finance? No? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Mrs. DeBevick seconded that motion, and we are adjourned at 6:46 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go right into our finance report. Mr. Mayor, you want to take over?
Sure. Thank you very much. I believe we have on the phone Mr. Incravati, who is representing the courts. They have several different funds, therefore several different budgets. And I wanted him here. There's a lot of nuances of how funds can be used or how they have to be used per state law. And I don't know all those, and I didn't want to mess anything up with that money or how those could be used. So I wanted him to be able to come out and address the courts and their different funds. And so I'll turn it over to Mr. Incravati.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Can everyone hear me okay? We'll start there.
Yes,
excellent.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about the certain statutory requirements out of our funds, and those will really be separated out into the project funds that we have here, beginning with the probation in 208, right? So for the court's purposes, we'll go through, 208, 209, 210, 211, 214, and then 220 is Idap. So I don't know if you want me to kind of just review those individually with you, so what their specific purposes are, how the court envisions it, how we like to go ahead and use them as much as possible and what we bring in. Or if you wanted even to start with the two general fund accounts, which you certainly can do. And I also don't know what you have before you to kind of cross-reference, but if you're looking at the entire budget, do you want me to start with the 101s, or you just want me to jump right in with the special project funds?
Could you start with the general fund?
Absolutely. So general funds for us, as far as what we present to you, come out of the 101 4120, which is the courts, and then the 101 4235, which is probation. So the courts general fund.
Excuse me, Mr.
What page are you on?
Can you give us the page number, Mr. Incravati?
Are you looking at my?
Carol, mute yours.
Mr. Incravati, can you give us your page number that you're looking at?
Well, I'm looking at from an Excel spreadsheet.
Oh.
Just printouts. So if are you able to find the 101 4120? What do you have?
4121. Okay.
Yeah. 4120.
I think it's 46. 45. Page 45.
Yes.
Okay, 45. Thank you.
Salary. All right, you guys got that starting with judges' salaries?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
That's correct.
So what you have here, with the judges' salaries, they stay pretty consistent in their request from the city from year to year. Most of anything that's changing is being paid by the state. So we have the judges' salaries, we have the bailiffs' salaries, and we saw some changes there from 2018 to 19 to 20, and primarily those changes with the bailiffs. It comprises a large group. I've got 2 court bailiffs, and then judicial bailiffs, if you will, right? And then we have 2 security bailiffs, and then we have the outside service bailiff. So there's rather a large group of individuals that comprise that line item. And Jeremy's been kind enough to kind of set out the court security officers as a separate line, which is going forward. I think we're going to go ahead and use that a little bit more to kind of highlight a little bit more about what we do there. Our court security officers represented the biggest change of what we had this last year, primarily because of COVID, its impact twice. First off, when we had shut down, we shut down for about 10 weeks during the middle of March, about this time last year, until the 1st of June. The building had shut down, but we were still operating to some level, so we still had them coming in. And then as we got into opening in June 1st, we ended up using both of them to try to control our capacity. As you know, there were the second floor, we had a limited number of people that we could bring in. So we needed both of them, one outside the building to kind of control and bring people in as space allowed on the second floor. And then maybe, hopefully you guys know, we've started doing jury trials next door at the Masonic Temple, which has been a nice environment. It worked out very well for us because their ceremonial room is beautiful up on the 3rd floor there, and it gives us enough space to go ahead and bring a jury in, bring a jury pool in, select a jury, and then conduct a jury trial. So we started doing that. We did that in October. Well, it also kind of required us to double book, if you will, the court security bailiffs, both in the courthouse, because then we continued to maintain court operations within the municipal building, but then also went ahead and operated within the Masonic Temple and needed a court security officer there. So we saw a little bit of a bump there from 2018-19 into 2020. We're still using, in fact, we're doing it this week if you get the opportunity. We're still using the Masonic Temple this week, and we'll do it one more time in April to conduct jury trials. We go 2 weeks solid. Judge McKinney would take a first week, and Judge Lanzinger will take the second week and just conduct our jury trials next door. And we're doing that in our second week here this week with Judge Lanzinger. We're going to do it again at the end of April. And then we're hoping, as we get around to May, June, that maybe we can work something back within the municipal building. So that's a little bit of an anomaly there within the bailiff salaries, and it comprises a number of people that we'd like to break out and kind of give a little cleaner delineation as we go forward. So Jeremy's been kind enough to add that court security officer's line, which you may not see anything entered on yet. So we'll be doing that going forward. The rest are just payroll expenses that you see there. And then when we get down into operation and maintenance in the 101, not a lot, and we're trying to minimize any kind of impact there at all. Training is really training and travel has been minimized, and we see that going forward into this year. So a lot of those funds aren't used. Supplies and things of those nature, we try to look to our specialized funds to do the supplies. So the operational supplies for the court for the year, we really kind of sing at about $3,000. So questions with regard to that particular fund, or you want to move along? Hearing none, we'll go over to probation. Probation, you have pretty much the same numbers carrying forward each year. We're not making a large change at all in probation. The thing that jumps out at me there, and this is 101-4235, is just the health and life insurance everybody's seeing, the health costs that everyone's seeing. I see a larger adjustment there. I don't know, our actual was not that high. There has been one of our probation officers made change to a family program that might increase some things there. So that was maybe just a cautious adjustment there in the budget for that one. But really within that, we're staying at the same level. We're not doing much in the way of any raises, any increases at all. So we're staying at the same level. And again, when you look to operations and maintenance, we're going to look to try to run that and complete that out of the specialized fund for probation. That would be the 208 fund. So that's kind of what it looks like there in the probation department. Our probation department consists of 4 individuals. There was a part-time secretary that's actually rolled into a full-time probation officer, and that's being taken care of out of the 208 fund then as well. And you'll see that as we go forward. Any questions there? Okay. Well, 208 is what comes next, and I apologize. I don't know what page you might find that on, but it's in the Special Services Funds, and it's the Probation Services Fund, which is Fund 208.
Page 90 for the budget workbook.
Thank you very much. So what you see here is right at the top, as far as the revenues, the intergovernmental revenue funds, those are coming in. Those are small grants that our specialized dockets receive through the course of the year. We hope to rely on them year to year, and I can tell you that just this year, both specialized dockets needed to go through a recertification process with the Supreme Court. We completed that. It was a bit of an ironic change because Judge Flagg coming on board now, she needed to recertify as a new judge for the mental health court, and Judge McKinney happened to be up for recertification for his drug court. So both of those completed a recertification process in a COVID environment this year, which was interesting. But we've got both of those specialized doctor course recertified. And so based on your enrollment, then you're eligible for the funds that you see here. You see that our drug court will be eligible for $30,000, $5,000 then for ATP. We budgeted 15, obviously for the best is a mental health court. And ATP, those are the individuals that are eligible for Medicaid assisted treatment. They don't have to follow through that line, but they're just individuals eligible for it. So even with those, they are limited to what you can spend them on and who can spend them. You're hand in hand with the Ohio Department of Mental Health Addiction Services, and they partner heavily with the local ADM board. And so when you get down to expenditures on us and you drop all the way down to operations and maintenance, you'll see those sums pretty much expended in full, and they'll look to make sure that we expend those funds in full. Anything that's not expended needs to be returned to the state, just for a record there. Supervision fees, we tend to stay around 100,000. We hope that continues. And from that, we pay a probation secretary, which really is becoming a probation officer through the course of this year. So we've marked a little bit of an increase for her, but we're doing that within our own funds because we're relying heavily on probation. As I'm sure you all know, I mean, there's not much in the way of Summit County jail space for individuals through the court, right? We're grateful to have the Barberton Municipal Jail down there and as a short-term type timeout facility. But it certainly is a challenge for us to do something to have someone sit someplace, if you will. So we rely heavily on Oriana House and their cask programs. We really pull teeth to try to get someone to actually sit in a county jail. So that gets into a few things that I'll talk about here as we go further into this. But those personal services are about the same. We're looking at a little boost for our one probation officer who's doing a real nice job. We've asked a lot. Our two younger individuals there are doing wonderful. So we'd like to try to keep them, make sure they stay with us once they get up to speed with us. So probation, training, and travel, again, last year spent none. We've kind of bankrolled that into next year to hopefully get some of the new probation officers the training that they are required to take. Now, they're required to have a certain number of hours to continue to operate as probation officers for us. When you look at professional services, what jumps there are professional services provided by third-party entities that help us do programming. It could be Oriana and CASC, which is more like a residential type program. It could be something else through the ADM board where they're providing treatment and other types of services for them. So individuals that aren't otherwise paid, and certainly if you think about the number of people that we service, 70,000 or so for that type of services is not that much when you really think of the numbers that we deal with. Now, luckily, a lot of them we're going to be taken care of by other Medicaid services and Medicaid payments. And so if they get down to us, then we will balance in and actually pay the balances as they come back to us. So you'll see that we budget quite a bit for that out of the 208 fund. Got to be careful to do it, but hopefully we're able to find other sources that the money can be used for. And then beyond that, it's hopefully just a wash. And we do try to budget a wash if you look at that, but based on the grant funding that we bring in and the service fees that we bring in, we're trying to stay close to that in total. Now, our bottom line there shows a little bit of a shortfall if we're going to budget 190 expenditure, but historically we have not spent all that. We've spent closer to what we generally tend to bring in on there. So we do have a bit of a surplus there, and we want to watch because, boy, we rely more and more on the probation department and their services and the services of third-party agencies. So again, that's set up by statute. Those come from just, if we didn't really talk about that revenue source other than grants, the supervision fees come from just as you said, it's a fee that is charged an individual that is participating in the probation department. Sometimes there's additional fees that tied to the cases themselves as general court costs. And so that helps fund the department. Questions there? Our next we'd go to 209, which is the court special projects operations. And this one had an alarming trend if you look back historically. We had, and you don't get a chance to see much before 2016, and I started in 2016. We had clipped along with revenue right around 600,000 to 640,000, right? And you see that in 2017. Well, there's a significant drop off in the number of traffic cases primarily, Well, we went from 17 to 18, and we had a significant drop. You're looking at $120,000 in revenue drop right there, right? And this is an important fund for us. And as we stepped off and saw that happening back in 2018, we got to 2019 and said, well, what's going to happen here? You know, is this going to continue to fall? Is this a situation where we're going to now drop considerably again? And luckily we have not. I'll say we've kind of bounced back a little bit and then kind of maintained it. 2020 has been a tough year to try to budget as far as the revenues and watch what comes in. But the impact wasn't as much as we thought we would see having been closed for 10 weeks. So we're kind of around that 520,000. And from that, we like to do essentially two things. We can, again, this is also driven by statute. It is money taken from cases based on counts and essentially fees. And when I say counts, there could be a disorderly conduct and then a misrepresenting ID. So you're going to get like a $10 charge or a $20 charge on each one of the counts. And as those are collected, then they're applied specifically by statute to these types of services that the court provides. So what I'm looking at, and the way we kind of handle all of this historically, you'll see under the general fund reimbursement, right? And that's down in the operations and maintenance. And that's our larger disbursement out of this account is that, and then monthly we will do by judicial order, return to the city. So that money is returned essentially to the general fund for our operation. 500,000 historically, we did 450,000 because of our concerns that we're now, and if you look historically, the balance on this fund, it is decreasing, and that is something that we're not real comfortable with. But nonetheless, that 450,000 comes close to what our expenditures are from the out of the 101 funds, and so we want to try to continue to keep that going. I think where we're at is watching those funds that we can watch, and that would just be our professional services. What do we need to bring in to operate the court? We try not to push that beyond where we had originally budgeted 40,000. We kind of stay around 25,000, and so we're going to ask just to really for council to approve a $25,000 budget on that amount this time, and then at the same time watching what our dispositive motion and criminal traffic case revenue is over the next year or two. Can we see a little bit of an increase and get ourselves back into a spot where we're not losing money on this? Okay, because we do want to keep a little bit of a buffer here for us. It's significantly went down. We kicked in a fair bit to keep the jail open at some point in time, but so now at this point we just like to kind of hang tight to these numbers to see if we can kind of keep this thing treading water for a period of time here. Other questions on the 208, or excuse me, on the 209 account? Okay. A court computer fund. So there's two court computer funds. You'll see 210, which would be the next one, and then we may jump to 214. I don't necessarily want you to look at that, but we're going to talk about 214 in a minute, and then 210 is the one that's the next that we're faced with here. So this court computer fund, by statute, is driven for the operation of the clerk of courts. So the statute language under which your 210 account here is set up is for the operation and the efficient operation of your clerk of courts. And so, more Diana's fund, if you will, Ms. Stevenson's fund. And so they can use that for several things. And as you know, we have been looking at and trying to save towards a case management system. Currently, we use the Henshin system. They're out of Cincinnati. It's a nice system. The costs are quite reasonable for that system. It's not flashy. If you've ever kind of been into the clerk of court's office and looked at their operation, certainly isn't a flashy system. But boy, the other ones that you hear individuals talk about, if we think of changing that, and Pioneer is a name that comes up, or Courtview is a name that comes up, you hear people grumble about them, and you're spending $400,000, $500,000 to get into it, right? And then annual service agreements of 5 figures, $15,000 to $20,000 in annual service fees. And so they were cautious on pulling a trigger on any type of a change here into a case management system, but that's essentially what the money that's kind of being held back is for. And at some point in time, we will find ourselves in a position to have to make a change out of the older system, or at least be in a position to do it. In the meantime, we can use this fund for the professional services that we do take, like, for example, Swisscom obviously provides a great service for you guys, provides great service for us. So Swisscom is paid out of this. If we, essentially, if computers are updated, we're going to use the court computer fund for this. We're going to use the clerk's computer fund for it. If we need toner cartridges, if it's related anything at all really to computers and their operations, that we can pull from this fund. And that's essentially what we've been doing to try to focus the expenditures out of this fund and also the court's computer fund, rather than general fund money, but then also trying to steer additional expenses away from our, the 208 court general fund, where we're trying to get most of that back to the city. So that's essentially what that is used for. Certain line items we just don't do so much anymore. The video arraignments are pretty much handled inside. We're doing equipment and handling a lot of things by Zoom now and Polycom. So any questions with regard to the clerk's computer fund? All right. Special projects buildings. That's the fingers crossed for someday that we can help out with the city and head to a different location. Any thoughts of refurbishing the current location? There really isn't much talk about that because of the expense that comes. There's discussions about different locations that we've used this now to help develop those. We've used it for purposes of creating some reports and having some essential studies done, some drawings done historically. Right now, we just continue to bankroll it and try to grow it. That's been our position on it. It's been a nice, consistent, call it 200,000 annual increase. We're sitting right now at crested about 2.6 million. I'd like to get closer to 2.8 then. I don't think we hit 3 in the next year, but that's been a nice, consistent growing fund. And it's great to sit there and have that money towards the new facility. If it's a joint thing with the police, if it's just a city situation where we're partnered with council and doing something of that nature, it's fine. The concern always is, when we step off and head a certain direction, is there enough? Once you start spending that money, you start spending, right? And so we would like to have a clear shot as to what ultimately is going to be the end game on what this could be its best use for, since we spend a good bit of time, and the city's been working with us, spending a good bit of time in saving it. So careful planning going forward, but those funds are there for the purposes of helping out if we can all come to a new home at some point. Are there questions here? Good, I'm boring you all to death. Okay, excellent. We're going to go on to, I got computer legal research as your 214 fund. So computer legal research is essentially two things by statute. Our computer legal research, which we use LexisNexis, that's a fairly fixed cost. And if you look down there, again, this is also generated the same as any of our other funds. They're generated by court costs that are assessed individuals that participate in the court proceedings. So you got two lines really. Court legal research is the first thing that comes out of the statute. The second language in the statute talks about court computerization. So we were able to, and in a few years, again, Jeremy, a few years ago helped out and allowed us to break that out into two separate areas: court computer legal research, sure, but then court computerization. So now this is the court's fund, which will be distinct and different than Diana's fund and her court computer fund, right? So the clerk computer fund and the court computer fund, ours here is smaller. The amount by statute that we can take out of the case is smaller significantly, but it helps. It helps greatly. When we're able to break that out and do the court computerization line, now we can do things like pay for our own computer updates. We've done a fair bit, some grant money too, but we've done a fair bit in bringing some remote technology into both council chambers and the small courtroom, and we've also done it in the jury room now. So a lot of that has been either grant money we received from the Supreme Court last year or coming out of this fund to update and to do things here. So it gives us the opportunity then to provide some of the technological advances and take advantage of remote technology, but then also allows us to do some of the simpler things if we got to burn through some toner cartridges or replace some machines or replace some printers. So that comes out of here as opposed to general fund money. Any questions there? Then last is perhaps one of the most frustrating, and we're going to jump all the way to 220, the Indigent Drivers Alcohol Treatment Fund. And I know we've mentioned each one of these are kind of governed by statute. The statute allows the court to go ahead and collect those as fees to cases. This is a little different animal. However, it is driven by statute and tightly driven by statute. It is specific dollar amounts set for individuals charged with OVI offenses. And those amounts then are both collected by Diana and then certain sent off to the state, but then it circulates back to us from the state of Ohio for very specific purposes. And you essentially have three types of funds there. You have IDAT, and you have Idiom, and then you have IDAT Reserve. So IDAT is the Indigent Drivers Alcohol Treatment Program. And so that can be used very specifically for assessment, treatment, and transportation for individuals that are charged with OVI offenses. And that's it. So I got an indigent individual charged with an OVI offense, and I can pay for treatment, assessment, and transportation for that individual in his case, and that's done by court order. That's great. There's certainly a fair number of those, but the fund continues to grow, and it's tough to sometimes expend it within that limited scope, right? And then the other one is the IDIM, or the IDAM or IDIM, which is the Indigent Drivers Alcohol Monitoring and Interlock, right? So you got interlock and alcohol monitoring. So what's paid through there? An indigent OVI offender again, right? So these are all just OVI cases that has been required to put an interlock on the car or been required to wear an alcohol monitoring device, but can't afford to do that. So this individual under court order, the indigent defendant then ordered to do that by statute, because the statute in certain OVI offenses, when you have multiples, are going to then require an interlock if you're going to be driving privileges. They're going to require the individual to be monitored. And often we like to have that monitoring going on, alcohol monitoring. So that can be paid from by this fund. But again, this is a fund based on the number of times that it gets used that continues to grow. So last 3 or 4 years, we embarked on a program to kind of develop this surplus IDAP funds, okay? So the surplus funds, again, are a creature of statute. But what the statute has set up then is, well, if the court determines that there are sufficient funds that exist to satisfy the purposes of both the IDAT or the IDIM fund, then the court, by journal entry, can transfer funds, declare surplus, and transfer the surplus funds into an IDAT reserve. So what does IDAT reserve get me? IDAT reserve gets me the ability then to go ahead and use for alcohol treatment, transportation, and assessment any individual charged with a crime, and it doesn't have to be an OVI. So just an indigent individual now that's charged with a crime here that needs an alcohol treatment system, needs an alcohol assessment, needs some transportation to get to it. Now that opens me up to any of the charges that we have here before us, which is helpful. So we've kind of engaged in a pattern. I don't know if you see balances over historically, but you'll see some money starting to shift. It's from IDIM to IDAT, and then from IDAT to IDAT reserve to allow us to kind of help, again, pay for some of these services to individuals that are now charged with more than just OVI offenses. So this is a fund that we're continuing to try to expand our use on and get people help with it that they need. It'd be nice if I could expand it further, but I'm only limited to indigent individuals with alcohol treatment and assessment and transportation. And I think that is it. So I appreciate your patience as I went through all that. Questions?
Mr. Ingrabati?
Absolutely.
I was just wondering if you could, on page 94, which would be account 211, or
Gotcha.
214, I guess.
Sure.
Oh, no, 211. It's 211.
Yep. 211 is the buildings project. Yep.
Yes. So there is in the operations and maintenance professional services budgeted for $1 million.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Is there something planned with that? Is there?
Excellent question. And historically, what has happened is to have that in place. You'll see it was budgeted for a few years and not used. If we get to our next step, that if you get anywhere with a project on a building here, it's going to be the engagement of professional services. It's going to be architect. We were close to doing that last time when we were looking over there at Hoppigan, right? We had gone through an RFP to vet an architectural firm and an engineering firm to do some drawings, to try to now get some pen to paper on some actual physical drawings. So we're going to start. Your next step, if we head that way, are going to be professional services in doing architectural renderings or doing engineering renderings for this. And the question is just, where do you go with it? So that's why it's there. If we need it and you find you're going to take that step, then it's budgeted for it. But otherwise, you're generally not going to be using it.
Okay, I guess my piggyback question then is, if it weren't budgeted for, all it would require was to come back to City Council for approval, correct?
I would imagine so, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but again, as those things happen, we're asking the council just go ahead and approve that budget for it. The other thing we'll probably do is take a look at, within this next year, what can we do or not do with a different proposed site. And so it's nice to have that available if we do. Of course, none of it's really here's what you're looking at, of course, this is going to come before you anyway, because anything that we take those large steps on it's going to require a bidding process, and it's going to require council approval.
Okay, I guess that was my question, is whether or not it would require council approval because it's already in the budget.
Well, I think when we're going, and you guys can let me know that, but if we're going to take a large step like that, I think council's going to be aware of it, and we're going to be bringing contracts in front of you on it.
Mr. Flaker, can you weigh in on that?
I mean, if they're going to go out and do a large project, I mean, they have to follow the same guidelines as anything else, to where if the contract's going to be over $50,000 for the project, they're going to have to go to council and get that approved before we can do anything, before they can even proceed. So, like
even if
Mr. Inquiry was saying, if, say, for instance, they come up with a project worth $500,000 or something of that nature, he would need to still present it in front of council for council's approval before the PO could even be taken out, and we can even think about spending that money.
Okay, even though it is budgeted in here.
Yeah. Anything over $50,000 needs to go to council.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Frank. Oh, muted. Oh, got you muted.
I said, thank you, Mr. Incavati. This may not fall under courts, but I know that we have been getting a lot of public records requests, and I don't know if that would fall under the law department or somehow the courts are involved in that, but I was wondering how are those paid for, the records requests?
That's a good question. The records request, like, we provide a record, and I would defer probably to your law director for the ones that you're getting. But my understanding is that we can charge a reasonable copying fee depending on the nature of which they're looking to receive that. Right? If they want a hard copy of it, sure, but we're entitled to charge a small bit for that. We have not been inundated with a lot of those public record requests. A lot of our requests come through by way of requests for audio from a hearing or something of that nature, right? Which we can easily provide digitally, and I got a Dropbox account and we throw it up there. I will say I know there's been some requests for some clerk of court salary and some of that nature is a recent one that came across, and so that's essentially going to be maybe something that the finance department has more so than Diana directly. But a lot of our requests, that have not been paper stuff. So I honestly don't see that. So it's more electronic requests on our end.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure. So I can be more help there. Anything else? Okay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Incavati. Appreciate your explanations and descriptions on everything. It's just tough budget on your side, because statutorily you have to do a lot of things, and you're kind of handcuffed, if you will, by what the state, how you can use the money.
That is true, and we do like to try to fold that into the court operation as much as possible, and I think you'll see that balance of us returning money through the court general fund and reimbursement to try to help the city as much as we can. It's a tough thing. What we're interested in seeing going forward is how these numbers rebound. I'm sure as the city is, right? It's been an interesting year, and so I'm anxious to go through it. But I really appreciate the opportunity to come here and answer any questions you might have. That's an ongoing thing. You know where to get a hold of me and know where I am. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you have additional questions. But I appreciate all your time on this and dedication to the city. Quite frankly, it's nice to see you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You did a great job.
Thank you, sir. All right. I'll take care. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you.
I was going to turn it over to Greg Tracy now to talk about the streets.
I don't want to follow Mr. Incorvati. That was really good. Hopefully mine's just as exciting. We'll start out with Fund 201. That is the Street Capital Fund. It is page 77.
Yeah.
I'll give everybody a minute to get there.
Page again.
77. I can see Joyce still flipping, so I'm waiting for Joyce. You're the only one I can see.
I got it.
All right.
Thank.
So you can see 2021, the starting fund cash balance is just a little over 1.2 million. There's $204,000 in encumbrances. Those are POs are already in place for project engineering for Worcester State and for 2nd Street Southwest. And the general engineering services for the 2021, there's a PO in place for the 2021 road program. The revenue line items here, the most important line item obviously is the withholding. You'll notice there's been, last year was a little bit of an anomaly. We actually met our numbers, but if you look at the graph for the way the revenue came in, it looked like a Colorado Rockies mountaintop. I mean, it was just up and down. You didn't know where it was going to go, but we ended up meeting our budget line item there. Gas tax has been down across the board in many other places. Safety funding is down through the state because it is funded by gas tax, but we ended up faring pretty well with the decrease in volume of gas usage over 2020 and also just the decrease in price. So hopefully this year, with people getting back out and driving to work and going on vacations, and an increase in gas prices for us isn't such a bad thing from a revenue standpoint for street capital, but obviously it is for expenses just for operations. We've budgeted 1.1 million for this year, just to be conservative, not knowing what's going to happen post-COVID. I do think we shouldn't have any problems meeting that number. The following line items, the business estimates, business finals, individual estimates, and finals and penalties are items that are typically handled through finance. I believe, and Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, those are probably relative to quarterly payments for businesses and then payments to make up any differences at the end of the year, and the same for the individuals. Payments for estimates and then final payments to make up any differences. The biggest thing we watch is the withholding for gas tax, for the income tax. I'm totally just messed that up. I'm on the wrong fund. That has nothing to do with gas tax, by the way. Those are all just the 0.25% of the income tax. My bad.
Thank God, Tracy, because I was really confused.
I just gave you a big spiel for the wrong fund.
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
I was looking at it like, man, we didn't make much.
I know. I was like, wait, am I on the wrong page?
Nope, I just clicked on it and I have a little note there. So that's your 0.25% income tax withholdings. My bad. Okay. Any questions on the revenue after I cleared up that? All right, so we go down into the other financing sources. Council we just read the notes in Finance Committee. There's a $740,000 note in there. Then you go down to expenditures. There is $40,000 this year budgeted for the CCA overhead. Obviously, that is going to be Rita now. It was just increased for unknown costs that could be associated with the transition to Rita. That's just something to put in there to be just as a precaution since we're changing over. So it's historically not that high. I'm not sure what to expect when Rita takes over. Moving down into the infrastructure portions of the budget, the fund line item ending in 3760. So you'll see, I'm sure there'll be some questions on the actuals for 2020. It looks kind of funny, but a lot of it is just when numbers hit from 2019. So if you look at infrastructure asphalt under 2019 over there to the left, it's showing like 194,000 this year for actuals. That was the final two payments of the 2019 road program. That money was budgeted for in 2019, but it just was processed in 2020. So none of that money came out of the 2020 budget. It was just accounted to the books in 2020. And the same for some of the engineering. That was engineering below that for AMAT 2nd Street. That was budget. That was a PO that was for 19 that carried over and was processed in 2020, but the money was already accounted for. If you move down a little bit farther into the 2020 line items, you'll see $60,000 for this year for project management and inspection services for the road program. Typically, inspection services and the engineering is 8 to 10% of the cost of the program. So this year you're seeing a $700,000 road program for the residential road program. If you look over to the column to the left, the actuals for last year, the $3,000 that you see in the infrastructure asphalt, which is where the engineering usually goes, was a little bit of leftover payment from the 2019 road program engineering services. Again, those were budgeted in last year's budget, but they were processed in 2020. One thing I'm sure you guys are looking at is the $232,000 in infrastructure asphalt. That is another one that what you're seeing there is the cost for Waterloo and Van Buren. We also made a retainer payment to Talmadge Asphalt. We were still holding onto their retainer, waiting on some items. We paid half of the retainer back to them, and we got to keep the other half. And we also paved Home Avenue. The Waterloo and Van Buren project was initially supposed to come out of the permissive license tax fund. It was incorrectly processed with the streets capital fund on the PO. So all we did this year was we flip-flopped. You'll see to the left, the Norton Avenue and Worcester Road resurfacing. The cost for those is very comparable to Waterloo and Van Buren. So we'll be taking those out of permissive tax this year because of that mix-up. So that's why that was there. And you don't see the expenditures then next to those line items below that. So it was just a money taken from a different account, and we'll take it from the other account this year. And then you see the $131,000 in the actuals for the Worcester State. That is how much has been paid out for the engineering services so far on that project. Total engineering services for that project is right around $240,000. You also see AMET's engineering budget for this year for 2nd Street. That should say Southwest. It says Northwest. And that is going to be our 20% match to 2nd Street Southwest construction that is supposed to occur this year. I don't expect it to be that much. In fact, I just got the final resolution from ODOT, and the total that we need to put in escrow for Worcester Road North, Norton Avenue, and 2nd Street Southwest is right around $280,000. So between the 180 in street capital and the other 170 that's budgeted in permissive, there is plenty budgeted to make that escrow payment, and we should not have to use all of that money. We also came in well below budget on the Waterloo and Van Buren jobs this year. So we should be receiving money back from the state that we'd put in escrow for those projects that can be applied to this fund. Total capital, you can see there $940,000. There are the debt service payments for the bond and the note principal that we paid. We're going to pay $1 million this year down on the note. That leaves us with an ending fund balance of $816,000, but I do expect that to actually be more than that with the repayments back from our escrow we gave for Waterloo and Van Buren, and also for eventually we'll get the escrow payment back, pending that will be under budget for the 2nd Street Southwest project. Are there any questions for 201? Go ahead, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Can you just clarify for me the $700,000 under 2020 infrastructure asphalt? Is that for just the residential street? So that's not any of our matching portions?
Nope, that is strictly for the residential program.
Okay.
You'll see those matching funds broken out separately. So that's that Second Street should say Southwest, but it says Northwest. That's a 20% matching fund, and then in 204 is the other 20% matching funds for Worcester Road North and Norton Avenue.
Okay.
So your 700,000 is strictly for the road program for this year for residential.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I do not see any. I will move on to 202 streets. And this is where all my gas tax talk was supposed to happen. So hopefully you retain that. Our beginning cash fund balance was $778,000. There's a small amount encumbered from 2020. Gasoline tax receipts, we were shy of our estimate last year. So we just budgeted conservatively this year, but I do think that's going to go up with the increase in gas prices and the increase in just volume of traffic and things, people getting back on the road. So we kind of met in the middle on that one for now. You also have the Undivided Auto Tax, another portion of the gas tax that goes to this fund. There's interest income, miscellaneous income. My presumption is that the $66,000 was probably something from the BWC money that we got back. That is something I'd have to check with finance on, but historically that is not the type amount that we receive in revenue for miscellaneous. So it's budgeted more in line with the historical averages. You'll see this year a small transfer from the general fund. Last year we went through the year without the transferring any money, but because we didn't capitalize with all the gas tax that we thought we were gonna get for 2020, likely due to COVID, that we are gonna have to transfer some money this year to bring down any deficit spending in the fund. Overall, we have 1.3 million in total revenue budgeted for 202 streets. Wages, you'll see that wages has kind of varied throughout the years, but typically we always budget around between 650 and 700,000. We have lost staff over the years. That is the reason for the actuals. I mean, they're not going down steadily, but you'll see that they are down a little. We did hire a general foreman last year. We have 2 spots budgeted this year in the budget. If we were to fill those, we get closer to that 682,000 spot. We will likely look at filling one and see how the revenues go for the year, and see if we're able to fill those spots, fill both of those spots. We're still down historically staff-wise in that department, but until there is additional revenue or we get a good feeling of where this gas tax is going to end up, we'll have to remain vigilant on tracking that and see if we're able to add anyone here in the near future. We do have seasonal wages in the budget. That is for 4 seasonals for 18 weeks. They're budgeted for $11 an hour, but it'll probably likely be a little bit less than that. That'll be a huge help if we're able to move forward with those seasonals this year to get us out on hopefully some more road projects and other projects in the department. You'll see the health and life insurance. It's budgeted for full staff. So everyone I was talking about that we'd love to add, but we're kind of waiting to watch the revenues come in. Also the healthcare holidays help with that. That's why it's so low last year, and obviously we weren't staffed fully in the department. And the same for the benefit funds, the Medicare, OPERS, severance pay contribution, workers' comp. Those are all just a percentage of wage rates that go in there. They're a constant percent, so that's how those are budgeted. If you look at 2020, there was a mistake made. Some of the employees are taken out of stormwater, and it looks like they were budgeted for health insurance in streets and stormwater. That's why it was so high. That was kind of an anomaly. What you're seeing now is more in line with 2019, 2018, 2017. So any questions on personal services? Obviously, you have the clothing reimbursements and gym membership reimbursements. Not all of them get fully utilized either. As far as the operations and maintenance, most of it's fairly self-explanatory. A couple of the things I'll look at here, tree removal. We didn't use it last year from the street department. We could have, but typically those are things that if something needs taken down, that's over a road, and we would either assess, or maybe there's a property maintenance violation, we might get that money back and put it in there, but that money's there in case we need to make those things happen. Could be something in city parking lots and things as well. Contracted services, that could be anything for street services, maintenance, or anything with building maintenance, just anything they would use a contractor for. We've done some repair and maintenance concrete. That is for small concrete jobs. They're just a little bit above what we would typically do in-house, or something that may be specialized that requires a different skill set. Repair and maintenance, there is some of that is for our annual GPS system, and there are some contracted repairs put in there as well. Auto insurance, property insurance, liability, telephone, all of that is done by finance to cover all those expenses. You have office supplies. The poor street department doesn't have a great office supplies budget, but we try to help them wherever we can to get them the equipment that they need. The operating supplies is typically for traffic control devices. At times we use them for, like, when I say traffic control devices, I'm talking about cones, pogos, delineators, anything that has to do with traffic control. Repair and maintenance supplies is usually tools, could be aggregates, our crack seal for when we do cutouts, or if they do overlays, they'll be crack sealing those. Anytime they redo anything that requires crack seal, that'll usually come out of that budget, and we buy that a pallet at a time. You have the motor maintenance supplies budget, and that's where a lot of all of our maintenance for our vehicles and equipment down there comes out of. They do a very good job of managing that fund. There's a lot down there that happens with equipment maintenance, so that can be that can vary depending on our luck on any given year. So this year we've already started off with a number of repairs that we're going to have to manage this fund moving forward quite handily. Paint supplies is usually we use that for when we paint curbs, parking spots. We'll do some stop bars, channelizers, and skip lines, things like that, painting that we do in-house. The street painting we'll use for long line painting. We may get contractors to do pavement markings. We don't do the long line painting in-house. So typically your center lane markers or your fog lines, we'll have those done by a contractor. Safety supplies is mostly for PPE, vests, safety glasses, gloves, whatever else we need, poison ivy, the poison ivy preventative stuff, all just safety related items. Salt, you'll see 162,000. That is our bid price plus the 20% overage if necessary. I don't know that we're going to have to get into that high this year. I think that we should be pretty comparable with what we were last year. We're sitting around a 2/3 dome right now, so we may be done purchasing for the year. It just depends if we get another event before spring actually starts. Street repairing materials, that's where all your hot mix asphalt, your cold mix asphalt, any emulsion, dirt, patch supplies, concrete, all that material is taken from there. It could be different aggregates, but that's the budget all those come from. You have some utility funds for electric and gas. Fuel station repair was moved to a separate fund that's shared by a number of departments. We are currently making upgrades to our fuel station. We've had a couple of issues with connectivity and our software, so we are making an improvement to that system right now. Gas and oil was down last year. Well, I expect it to go back up, so it's budgeted a little bit higher than last year. Radio maintenance is all part of the contract we do with the county, and that comes out of this. Is the vehicles that are in the street department come out of this fund here. Any questions on the operations, maintenance? In the capital, right now they have showing $10,000 in buildings. These are improvements to man doors, garage doors in the buildings, and some potential security upgrades to the buildings. And those could also be, the security upgrades themselves could be the doors. They have equipment and furnishings in here for $20,000. And what that is if you look at this fund, stormwater, sewer, water, we're splitting the cost of a new tractor and a boom mower because our boom mower is failing. It's been welded about 3,000 times and it breaks continuously. That's something that we'll be able to use in a number of departments for easement clearing and other items. So we're looking to take that out of multiple places and save a little bit of money in this fund as well. Vehicles, they are in need of a new pickup truck. I mean, most of the things they do down there, they have to pull trailers for a lot of their work. There's still a couple of Ford F-150s from the early 90s that we're driving around that will still probably allow seasonals to use, but we're trying to replace that fleet. So buying one truck and probably moving some trucks from some other departments to help bolster the fleet down there will be very helpful. On the capital lease, you have a lease payment for 2 dump trucks that were purchased a few years ago. There's a payment this year, and I think one more payment next year. We are looking at possibly purchasing at least 1 truck this year. That would also be in a lease purchase, but none of those funds would hit until next year, so it wouldn't have to be budgeted until next year. That is just something we'll have to monitor moving into next year. That leaves us total fund expenditures of $1.7 million and almost $400,000 in the projected ending fund balance. Do I have any questions on streets? Denny's on tonight, so I thought I would take his place and be extra thorough. Thank you. Mayor, do you want me to do permissive while we're here and I'm on street stuff?
Yeah, I thought permissive, you didn't touch state highway, did you?
No, but state highway is typically something that finance holds, and I think it reimburses, it goes towards wages in the street fund, I believe.
Right. If you want to touch on permissive and residential.
Okay.
That's a small one.
Permissive is 204, page 84. The beginning fund balance for permissive license tax is about $600,000. You have an encumbrance right now of $175,000. This is still just Romick Road. We haven't closed that out. The engineering and design for Worcester Road North, Norton Avenue, South Van Buren, and Waterloo just need to be closed out. Obviously, Norton Avenue, Worcester Road North are not going to be closed out yet because the projects are just going to be getting underway this year. Those are what those encumbrances are for. If you look at this year's revenues, you see an increase to $240,000 of expected revenue. That is taking into account the additional $5 fee that was passed in 2019. We wouldn't start realizing that money until this year. So we should see all those new fees start coming in. That was supposed to be between a $90,000 and $100,000 increase. So that's why that went up. You'll also see that in 2020, we had budgeted for $200,000 in permissive tax. That payment actually hit in 2019. It actually came in December 28th. So when this budget was done, it was done by the previous person in this position, and it wasn't known that that money had come in at that time. So the money was there. It just came in a year earlier than what it was budgeted for. If you look into the expenditures, last year we had $40,000 budgeted. That is for crack sealing and long line painting on permissive streets and any other pavement maintenance necessary. This year we bumped it to 60 to include some of the plans from last year and some new plans for this year. This year we're looking at crack sealing on 31st Street Southwest, Fairview Avenue, North Van Buren, Waterloo Road, and then we're still putting together the long line painting program as far as it relates to permissive funds. The crack sealing program, we typically try to look at cracks still in those streets 3 to 5 years after they're initially paved. If you go down into the capital outlay, you'll see $100,000 in for street repair and resurfacing. That is actually part of the residential road program. The road in here is North Summit Street, which is on the north end. It is a permissive street. It's in bad shape, but it'll be part of the road program, but it'll come out of the permissive funds because it is permissive. So it kind of extends the size of our road program a little bit as far as residential. I still consider it a residential street because it's in a residential area, even though it's technically permissive. If you keep going down, this is where when I mentioned in street capital that the funds for Van Buren and Waterloo were accidentally taken out of street capital. They're able to be taken out of either. So this year we elected to take out Worcester Road and Norton Avenue out of the permissive tax because Van Buren and Waterloo were not taken out, just the engineering was. So we just flip-flopped the construction on those two. That's all. And that's just $60,000 for construction of Worcester Road and $110,000 for construction of Norton Avenue. And then at the end, you'll see Eastern Road paving. What this is I don't know when this is going to happen. There's $100,000 in there. We've been approached last year by New Franklin and Summit County to pave Eastern Road from South Van Buren towards where the city limits end at Frew Drive. And we only have the north side of the road there is in Barberton. The south side is New Franklin. And then east of Frew Avenue is all Summit County. So that would approximately cost us about $50,000. And then the city of Norton is looking at a road project on Eastern Road on the other side of town from anywhere between Fairland and 21. There are portions of that, again, the north side of the road, north of the center line, not all the way through, just in certain sections that are the city of Barberton, that we would be looking to pay our match with that $50,000 of permissive funds in there. Those are kind of placeholders right now. I'm not certain when those will take place, but I want to make sure they're there in case the projects do move forward. Any questions on permissive license tax fund? Mrs. DeBevick?
Yeah, sorry. You said the Worcester Road North and the Norton Avenue. Are those also the $60,000 and $110,000? Are those strictly for engineering?
No, that's construction.
Okay, it says engineering in parentheses. That's why I asked. I feel like it does. Anyway.
Oh, so last year, that's it. So if you look at the number, technically, even though they have different fund numbers, it's still just one fund. They're all coming out of permissive license tax. So it started out as engineering when they made the fund. The $15,000 was there for this year. So they just used the same description, but that's for their construction. Okay. That's our 20% match.
That's our 20% match?
Yeah, okay. The $60,000 for Worcester and the $110,000 for Norton Avenue. Those are our 20% match for construction.
Okay.
And I don't think that we're going to expend all of those. Like I said, I just got the other day a total escrow amount of about $280,000, and we have budgeted about $370,000. So between the two funds, so I expect to get some of that back, and hopefully the project comes in under budget like Waterloo and Van Buren did.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
No problem. Any other questions? Well, thank you. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me or give me a call. I'll be happy to go over anything that you need cleared up.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy.
Thanks, Greg.
That's all I had planned for today. Didn't know, just so I can open it up to all the council for any budget. And then we'll be back next Monday for council of the whole, followed by a budget hearing.
Are you finished, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we're done then, and we'll see you next Monday.
Mr. President?
Yep.
If I can, Mr. Mayor, are there any future plans for any more vaccination sites off the top of your head, or any more events planned?
Not that I know of. So the one with Access Point, I'll give you an update on COVID here in a second, but the one with Access Point came together very quickly. And I know that they're in North Akron and Kent, and they're continuing to schedule. I'm assuming as they drop the age and add new demographics to be able to register for the test, for the vaccine, and as more doses of the vaccine flow in, that you're going to see more sites. I know that the Warstein Center up in Cleveland is going to have a massive vaccination clinic. Throughout the state, large mass vaccinations. This one, Access Point, was 500 people. They had 500 doses. It was Johnson & Johnson, one shot. So long answer to your question, but we don't have anything set up right now, but we're continuing to talk to Access Point, Barberton and Suma, Summit County Health, and the state, see where we can help out.
With the task force that you're on, has Barberton's football stadium been in any conversation for a mass site?
Yes, that's one that is, easy to the access to the highway, in and out, either off of Morgan or Norton. So you've seen a lot of vaccination sites where people stay in their car, and that would be kind of a perfect place because you can drive right through. So that's been one identified location. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Councilwoman Debevic.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that Access Point in Kent is having, they had quite a few appointments available when I scheduled one, not for me, but I scheduled one. And it's, I believe, the 18th. And they still had quite a few slots open. I'm not certain if they had 500 vaccines. It is the Moderna. And so I just wanted to put that out there that they did have quite a few open slots.
All right. A few other updates on COVID. They are looking statewide at having more rapid test and more at-home test available. So more information will come from that, but really pushing those. So far, the state of Ohio has completed about 1.4 million vaccines. This time last week, it was about 1.1. So that's people who have received the full vaccine. So there's still another 2.3 million who have received one of the two shots. So they're just kind of in that 3 to 4 week period. So you'll see that number of completed vaccines really explode here in the next few weeks. As mentioned, the city did work with Access Point last week. We were able, also the city was able to give out extra masks, hand sanitizer, and other helpful items to those that received the vaccine. But we will be working with Access Point on future vaccination clinics. As mentioned earlier, President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan Act last Thursday. Barberton is anticipated to receive funding through this bill. Jeremy, myself, and others are, there's a lot of webinars and explanation and details coming out the next few weeks on exactly how much and the uses of those funds and the paper trail and all that. So I have put a committee together for this, and we'll review the uses of the funding. I did ask Councilwoman Fry, and she accepted to be a representative from Barberton City Council to sit on this committee. She's got not only the years of experience on City Council, but also chair of the Finance Committee. So more information to come from that. And then just want to remind everyone, a year ago tomorrow will be the first internal COVID call that I've done. We've done at least one every week for the last year. And we're still in a state of emergency. This is a pandemic affecting the entire world. It's not a situation with a clear black and white or list of how to work through things. If there was, we wouldn't be in the state of emergency for a year. Everything that's gone on over the last year, so despite the politics, the social media, and everyone's opinion and different things that have gone on, I truly believe that everyone is doing the best that they can with the information that they have at the time when decisions are made. I know our concern, and my concern is the Barberton community and our residents. and the employees here. So the safer we are, the more likely Barberton will mitigate all these effects of the pandemic. So I reiterate to everyone, employees, residents, to continue to follow mandates. And even though things are opening up, that's great. It's getting to springtime, but it's still important to follow all the mandates so we can continue to see the numbers drop. So that's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have anything?
Mr. President?
Yep.
May I ask what, as far as next week goes, what the plan is with the budget? What funds we're going to look at?
My thought was we hit most, all of the big ones or most of the big ones. I was going to see what other questions flowed in this week from council and get back to you by the end of the week, and then just kind of open it up.
Okay, because I had some questions, and I just wondered if I'm not going to ask them if we're going to touch on those funds. So I'll just wait and ask then. So I didn't want to jump out of order.
Well, one of the big reasons I asked for council to email me the questions is that I can do more thorough investigation and give you more of an answer that's in more of a context and as much information as possible. So, this was put together a few months ago, and it's been a lot of changes since we started working on this. So I just like to be able to provide as much context as possible and answer with my answer to the questions.
Well, I would prefer to ask them in person. I've expressed that, so I would like to do that. So I just want to know at what point we are invited to do that.
At any time during the budget meetings. If you want to come in, we can set up an appointment.
Okay. Mrs. Fry, since you're chair of finance, when would you like me to address the questions? Would you like me to address them this week? Would you like me to address them next week? Would you like me to address a few of them this week and a few of them next week?
You're on mute, Mrs. Fry.
You're muted, Mrs. Fry.
You're on mute, Mrs. Fry.
I'm sorry. I just unmuted. It's a new system.
That's okay.
I was going, Mrs. DeBevick, if everyone that is here tonight is in agreement and you wanted to ask some tonight and some next week, that would probably work. I think next week is the last that we are going to even address the budget. So if you had some questions tonight and maybe the mayor needs time to get your answers, he could have them for next week.
Okay.
Is everyone in agreement that Mrs. DeBevick asked a few questions tonight? I'm seeing shaking heads, so okay.
It's like bubbly.
I'm ready.
If you'd like to go ahead.
Thank you. So basically, a lot of them just stem from the very beginning, which is page 13 and 14, which is just kind of an overview, a summary statement. So if we look at, let's see, I was looking at Fund 220, 252, the Business Incentive Program, and the 31,000 for operations and maintenance. I was just curious, in a detailed portion of that fund is page 120. What is the operations, the business incentive program operations, is that for potential businesses to use or to apply for? And what's the criteria for that, Mayor?
Yes, that money is set aside for businesses to apply for. I don't have the criteria in front of me, but generally speaking, it's based on number of employees and payroll. So it's for new businesses and existing businesses.
Okay. Thank you. I was just curious if that was what it was. It was a set aside, budgeted for as far as operations. If we look at Fund 221, which is the Parks Revolving, or I'm sorry, the Sports Complex Fund. The $15,000 inter-fund transaction, where is that coming from? On page 13.
That's from the income tax fund.
Okay. And was that just because we anticipated spending more in that fund for?
No, every year there's some type of transfer from income tax to sports complex. The fund, the fields have always been subsidized by the income tax fund. And the goal is to minimize that and have the foundation fields start at least not making money, but at least covering the cost. So I know in discussions with the Parks Director, Mr. Patterson, he's done a great job with getting the softball/baseball fields set up and teams and leagues signed up, but also making use of the soccer/football fields that are there. And then looking at other types of games, kickball and things like that. So they should be used quite a bit this year, and we've made some improvements late last year to the fields. So hopefully that this is the last time we have to make subsidize the fields there.
Okay, thank you. Also on page 118, the transfer, it's in the rental registration program fund. And I know this was gone over, but I have this question afterwards. The $15,000 budgeted transfer to Project Impact, is that for rental properties to be torn down, or is that just for general use?
I believe I'd have to confirm with Jeremy on that. I believe that's for rental only, but I have to confirm.
Okay.
Carla, could you,
Yeah.
Oh, I see you now for the first time tonight. Hi. Could you mention that the page number that you were asking about for the rental registration?
It's page 118.
Okay.
And there's a transfer of $15,000 to Project Impact, and I just was curious if that was for rental only properties, or if that included, or was that going in just to Project Impact and can be used for anything?
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to write it down.
Okay. So, Mayor, should I follow up with Mr. Flaker on that?
No, I will.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So also page 127, but I think I may have answered this myself in hindsight. So on page 127 under beautification, the actuals for 2020 of 16,000 for seasonal. I was under the impression we didn't hire any seasonal employees for 2020 because of COVID, but I know we did end up hiring a couple to plant mums. So
yeah, any seasonals there were in relation to the Mum Festival.
Okay. That after I jotted that question down and I thought about it, that's what I deduced. I asked that one. I guess that's good for tonight. I have a few others, but I want to organize the page numbers in a more organized manner to go through, so I can ask the rest of them next week. Thank you, Mrs.
All
Fry.
right.
Mayor, I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, and I know we emailed there, but please don't use that red highlighter again when you answer the emails. That was a horrible thing to try to read.
I was trying to be different.
White text.
You weren't the only one that complained.
I just turned 41. My eyes are going bad on me.
I
I
apologize.
complained too, Heidick. I complained also. I couldn't read it. It was tearing up my eyes.
Thank you for the backup on that one.
It's definitely our ages, because I couldn't read it either.
Yeah, I apologize. I won't do that again.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
See you
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Aye.
All right, and that concludes the city council.